Flack Talk with James Canning. The podcast with the inside scoop on journalists from San Diego and across the nation. If you're a communications pro, have a nose for news, or you're just nosy, this is the podcast for you. Now here's your host, James Canning.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Flack Talk. It's your host, James Canning. I have another great guest for you today. His name is Joe Little. Now, his last name is Little, but his personality is huge. And if you've ever seen him on NBC 7 San Diego, you know a Joe Little story. And we're going to get into that a little bit. But Joe, thank you for joining us here.
It is my pleasure to talk about me.
So, Joe, it's funny. I was here. I got here in like October of 2018. I think it was around November of 2018. I didn't know anybody. I went to this PRSA event, and lo and behold, there's this guy with this huge personality. Really didn't know until they said like who it was, who you were, because it was new to town. And you did a masterful job of emceeing the Public Relations Society of America San Diego chapter's award ceremony. And I remember walking up to Joe, and I had my little business card, and I handed it to him. All these media people, or not media people, but like PR people trying to get up to Joe. Joe, I was probably like the 10th one. He's like, yeah, thanks for your card. And then fast forward, I get a job at the county, and then I get to work with Joe on a couple stories. Like that was something for me. It was like Joe was, I think, one of the first reporters I ever interacted with here in town. So, Joe, I'm glad I got that opportunity, but I'm really happy that 5 years later I have this opportunity, so thank you.
Oh, I'm happy I had a chance to redeem myself because I'm pretty sure that evening I roasted the entire marketing and PR industry. Yeah,
man, you did. You were like laying into folks, and like I was like, oh shit, I hope I don't get on this guy's bad side.
We tend to be on battling sides, but most of the people in that room were friends and people I'd done stories with or for in the past, so I felt comfortable, but I know it had been a few more years before they invited me back. I emceed the same event like a few years later, but they were like, no, don't bring Joe back next year.
Oh, man. Well, it's like the correspondence dinner, right? They invite a comedian or someone, and they roast everybody in the audience, and then they might come back eventually. But no, I remember it was great. It was great, and it kind of introduced me a little bit to some of the San Diego PR personalities, but then also obviously the media personality here. And I think, as I've gotten to know you, I think one of the interesting parts of your job is what you do, the fact that you do it alone. And I want to get into that a little bit after we talk about I got this section that we kind of kick off the show with called On the Record Rapid Response Questions. Is that cool if we could start there, Joe?
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right, man. All right. Joe, what is your secret talent?
I don't know if I have too many talents, but I make a mean gourmet burger. That's my grill. That's my jam. I make a mean burger that no one else can duplicate. What
is it about that burger? Like, do you have a certain sauce? Do you do like a certain...
There's technique, there's ingredients. It's not just straight meat. There's stuff in there that make it stay juicy, stay fattening, stay big. There's nothing more offensive than someone who makes a burger that turns into a hockey puck. Those people should just stop making food.
I agree.
Like cooked chicken.
I agree.
I make mine juicy, unhealthy, and people are like, what is this? And I'm like, this is God in the form of a burger.
That's great. That's great. So, Joe, if you were making that burger and you happen to, slam your hand, with the meat pounder for the burger, what swear word would you think you'd cuss out or yell out or cuss out?
Cuss words, just let them go. Motherfucking shit, goddamn asshole.
Oh,
do you have a favorite?
Roy Kent is a hero of mine, and I'm just trying. My wife and mother be disappointed in me. I think I have two in a tie. Shit is my favorite, and the F word.
Okay. You can say it, man.
Fuck. Oh my God. I'm going to get fired for saying that. That's fine. Those are, I'm a dad. I'm a stereotypical dad. I'm a normal person. And man, when things go bad, they go bad. And I'm not one who's going to go like shucks and darn and whatnot. I'm just like a normal dude. And dude, as you know, in our business, things go wrong all the time. And then, just driving home in San Diego, there's someone in front of you, behind you, beside you, who does not know how to drive when it's raining, and it's like you have to resort to these words. And I apologize to my boss if he heard that and if he frowns upon it.
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. Do you have a guilty pleasure? And if so, what is it?
Little Debbie. I will break for Little Debbie. Little Debbie's my guilty pleasure. I am desperately always trying to not be a fat dad, but Little Debbie will make me stop in my track. I will leave my wife for Little Debbie. Wait.
We're talking the
cakes, the gas station treats, man.
Yeah. So like, do you have a favorite? Do you like the oatmeal pies, or do you like the
no?
What do you like?
I say Little Debbie. I should say Hostess as well. Little Debbie and Hostess. I will motorboat my way through a Twinkie, into a ho-ho, through a ding dong, to an oatmeal cookie, to a zebra cake. I will down an entire box of zebra cakes without thinking twice about it. I will skip meals and have just Little Debbie's. If Little Debbie's were healthy, I would be Adonis right now. I would be a god, because those things make me weak. I have no resilience against them. I just, I might as well pick this up here. I'm here at Target, get some tires, a t-shirt, Little Debbie's. Let's go.
That's great. Who do you have a kind of a childhood celebrity crush that you had when you were growing up?
Everyone's was Jennifer Love Hewitt. Yeah, Jennifer Love Hewitt was so strong. Everything about her was strong. Big fan.
All right.
Denise Richards also was first. I don't know if I was a child when she was at her height, though. Maybe.
Yeah, teenager. I mean, we're using childhood loosely here. It could be your teen years.
Cool. Well, there's plenty of teen into adulthood crushes, but no, yeah. Jennifer Love Hewitt, I think, is the earliest first one I'm going, oh my.
Got it.
So I love Jennifer Love.
Got it. So if you decided one day you want to trade places with someone and not be a journalist for a day, who would you trade places with and why?
I've thought about this question, and I would love, I played basketball growing up, played basketball in college, and I always wanted to play for the Lakers. So if I could trade places with LeBron James, but I would also want LeBron James's talents, not his whininess and annoyingness. I would just want his talents to play basketball for the Lakers. Call me Fletch. I would love to play for the Lakers. Magic Johnson was my idol growing up. I love Magic. If I could play for the Lakers, that would be a dream.
Wow. Okay.
That would be a dream.
Okay. I like that. So folks, you got a little bit of, information about Joe's personality, who he is. He loves some pastry cakes, he likes to say fucking shit,
Sounds like the white guy living next door. So boring.
Oh no, I think the reality is, though, we're not here for your personality, even though it's large. We're here to learn more about your career, and I think based on my research, and I think we're going to learn about more here, you've had a fascinating one, and I really would love to learn a little bit more, and I think our listeners would too. How did you decide you wanted to become a journalist? Were you just watching the evening news one day and said, I want to be Walter Cronkite, or how did that happen?
I was a jock. I wasn't a dumb jock. I was a normal AB student, but I played basketball, and I was lucky enough to play college basketball. And this is at the height of Sports Center. Sports Center is king. Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann news stories are being done about Sports Center.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be a sports anchor next to Dan Patrick in Bristol, Connecticut at ESPN. That was my goal. I just love sports, and I loved, I had this similar personality back in the day.
Yeah.
But no talent whatsoever. I went to, George Mason was a great production school for production, learning how to make TV, but not to be on TV. So I went to graduate school at Syracuse University, because Syracuse is known as Sportscaster U.
Yeah.
Marv Albert, Mike Tirico, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Bob Costas, and 90% of the people who work at ESPN went to Syracuse. Dave Ryan. So I went to Syracuse to get my master's and learn how to be a sportscaster. And literally in the first 6 weeks of this accelerated 1-year master's program. A brilliant professor who I credit a lot to my career, Hub Brown, says, why don't you just do news? You're going to learn more. You're going to be more creative. You're going to be exposed to more. You have more opportunities to find jobs. And if you want to do sports, I guarantee you, you'll find your way into sports. And I just trusted him, respected him, loved him enough to just say, like, literally, it didn't require that much convincing. I was like, all right, I'll just change the direction of my life right here on your recommendation. And I started in the rest of the year, I started focusing on news, and I did a little bit of sports stuff at Syracuse. And my God, if he wasn't right, I did jump in the news, got a job in Hagerstown, Maryland, which is like an hour and a half outside of Washington, D.C. in my first job. And I was, reporting, I was anchoring. And then my second station was in central Pennsylvania, the Johnstown Altoona State College Triopolis. It also includes the Penn State University. Yeah, it's horrible. Central Pennsylvania sucked.
Okay.
But sure enough, when I was there, I became the sports director. I was anchoring the sports every night, and
that's cool.
Hated it.
Really?
Hated sports.
Why?
Hated it.
After, like, what was it that you, obviously you thought you had one idea and then you learned something else. Like, what was that difference?
Well, I mean, just my professor really convinced me, because, like, if you want to do sports, go to learn how to do news. You'll become a better writer because you'll be exposed to more personalities, more subjects. You'll have a greater variety of background to rely on when it comes to writing more in-depth, better stories, as opposed to just doing X's and O's and numbers, which is what a lot of sports guys do. It's just like boring. I'm just going to regurgitate highlights in sports. So it make me a more well-rounded storyteller, journalist.
Yeah.
And by the time I'd spent more than 2 years doing news and got into sports full time, it was so narrow focused. It was so boring. It took the joy out of sports because I couldn't be in a press box and enjoy. You're not allowed to cheer in press boxes. Yep. It's kind of frowned upon. And then, I was young, married, a newlywed guy. And when does sports happen? Nights and weekends.
Yeah.
Not great for a social life. And a lot of people don't realize that, sports guys work hard. They sacrifice a lot. I wasn't interested in sacrificing that much of my life. I wasn't interested in going around and following sports teams and doing sports highlights all night long while my family's at home waiting for me.
Yeah.
So I immediately, as soon as I could, got back in the news and never looked back. And I've dipped my foot back into sports for stories. I've covered events. I love the Padres. I will die bleeding brown and yellow. I love my Padres. I love George Mason Patriots. I love my teams, but I don't want to cover them.
Yeah.
I've got a sports Emmy. I won an Emmy doing a sports story about Tony Gwynn's death. I've done things for sports, but the news is a much bigger canvas to play with when it comes to news. So after I was done with Central Pennsylvania, that's when I moved to San Diego in 2002. And I've worked at NBC here. I've worked at a small little cable station up north for about 3 years. And then I worked at Channel 10, the ABC affiliate here in San Diego, for almost 12 years. And I've been back at NBC since 2018.
No, that's great.
And now here we are. So 25 years later, after I left Syracuse, I'm 25 years into my career, and I feel it in my knees every second.
Well, I mean, talking about your knees here, I mean, you threw in something there that I want to go back to. I want to talk about your stories in a second, but you said you played basketball in college. So that was a part of that path that you didn't expound upon, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. Where did you play? Which school did you play at? And tell me about your career there.
Well, let's use the word career very loosely.
Okay.
Right? So
okay.
In high school, I was, your typical played freshman ball, played JV ball sophomore year, and then was a varsity player junior and senior year, sat the bench junior year, was a starter senior year. Like the most traditional basketball career ever.
Yeah.
Got to George Mason University in the Washington, D.C. area. George Mason, people may remember, basketball fans will remember from the 2006 Final Four run. That was like the first real Cinderella story.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to George Mason. Actually, I was offered like a basketball type deal, Park Academic, Park Athletic to another college. I turned it down because it was far away from home. And I was too too scared to leave mom. I was not in any mood. So I stayed closer to home, went to George Mason, which had a great production program. And I actually rode crew my freshman year.
Okay.
And
no easy task. That's not an easy task at all.
Well, they were just they were literally looking on campus looking for monsters. And I'm 6'4". I'm 6'4". I'm like, hey, you're huge. Come row. I'm like, okay. So my freshman year, I rode crew, and most magical, amazing sport. And I would still do it if it wasn't so freaking expensive. After that, I was like, I really miss basketball. So I just went over to the athletic office at George Mason and talked to the head coach, Paul Westhead, who many Lakers fans will remember from the 1980 Lakers championship team and Loyola Marymount. And he also coached the Denver Nuggets. Mm-hmm. He was the coach at George Mason at the time. And I was like, hey, man, I want to play basketball.
You're like, I rode crew, so I'm ready to play basketball for you now.
Yeah, and I averaged no points in high school and 20 rebounds a game. I was a defensive phenom in high school, but couldn't score to save my life. But he goes, well, no. And it doesn't work like that, son. And no, whatever. So he invited me to tryouts, and by God, I made the team, as a walk-on, and I played right bench for most of the season. I do have points, and then I do have NCAA Division I points and rebounds and fouls and turnovers and whatnot.
All right.
I have played, but I tore my ACL the next year, and I was like, well, that's it. I'm not good enough to ever play anywhere. Basketball takes up so much time. So I gave up, I was like, yeah, I'm done. I tore my ACL, had it surgically repaired, and then just focused on books from there. But I love George Mason. I freaking love it so much. And when they went to the Final Four, it was just incredible. And that March, I'm like, oh my God, I'm just like, when your team goes to the Final Four, and I know a lot of San Diego State fans can relate to it now.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. And literally 9 months later, my first son was born. I was like, oh, well, we do the math here. So his name's Mason.
Right.
Yeah. And then the second boy arrives, and we're like, well, I'm not going to name him George. But George is his middle name. So my kids are Tyler George and Mason Alexander. So.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
And that shows. It shows that obviously that experience overall, right? the basketball and the education meant a lot to you. That's amazing. Yes. That's fantastic. So look, folks, you've seen Joe Little stories. When you see it,
they have.
Oh, I think they have. If they haven't, we're going to put some in the links in the description here of the show so they can watch them. But when you watch your stories, to me at least, they come off a little bit like a piece of art. They're not just you looking at a camera, telling people what's happening. There's a bit of you have a certain style to the way in which you report. There's a certain kind of electric energy to it. And it doesn't matter what kind of story it is. You find a way to kind of work that in and make it a very interesting piece of news. And I'm wondering, where does that style come from? Can you talk to folks about it? I know they can't see it right now, but talk to us about the way you approach a story.
Well, the key word is story. There are two types of things that you see on local news, especially. There's a report, and then there's a story. Mm-hmm. A report is information, data dump. Someone coming on television saying, police said this happened, Bob's your uncle, and that's it. And that happens, and that's fine. That's journalism. It's facts. Here it is, and here it is. Mm-hmm. It's not memorable. No one remembers and retains. You might remember an image. You might remember an information, but you don't have an emotional response to it. Storytelling, telling a story about that report, changes the way people retain information. Science has proven that if I can make you feel an emotional response to the information I'm giving you, you're going to remember it more. We don't remember the first Tuesday of this year. We don't remember the Wednesday of last week. I don't remember those things. We call it Newsheimer's. I forget yesterday. But you remember things that gave you an emotional response. You remember getting into a fight with someone at work. You remember your first kiss. You remember holidays. You remember death in the family. You remember San Diego State winning, going to the Sweet 16. Things like that. You have an emotional response to them. So you remember them. I try and take the same perspective with my stories. If someone does something, if there's a murder, if there's a celebration, I'm going to try and tie it with great visuals wrapped around an emotional character. Someone who will convey the information, but give you a relationship, someone that you can care about and root for, or be mad at, or feel sorry for. And because I have the benefit of shooting, writing, and editing all of my own stuff by myself, I can control all these elements and put them in a way that I want to relay the information. And, and I always use the example when I teach this stuff to other journalists about, like, every city has some part of the year where they dedicate to fixing potholes. Great. You can interview the mayor, you can interview the supervisor, you can interview the council member about, we're spending $2 million on potholes. Potholes cause damage to cars. Great. Big deal.
Right.
And you see that report all the time. What I'll do is I'll go find Bob Smith, who lives on a road that looks like it's been bombed. And it looks like it's never been repaired. We all know these roads.
Yep.
They're all over the place.
I'm surprised there's somebody in San Diego. I didn't expect that many, but that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, the road leading to and from the airport is a disaster.
Yeah.
But I will go find a person who lives on that road, put a microphone on them, and say, like, dude, walk me down your street and tell me about your road. And it's funny, it's comedy, or it makes you mad because this guy's going, look at this thing. I've literally done this story where the guy's walking around going, look how big this pothole is. And it's something we can all relate to. We can all relate to Bob Smith because we've all driven through potholes or seen potholes or been annoyed by potholes. And this guy is, I was like, yeah, we're rooting for this guy. Like, yeah, dude, your road sucks, man. That's what I try and do with all my stories. Make them personal, make them emotional, make them visual, and then also bring in that factual report information so that, why are we talking to this guy Bob Smith about his potholes? Oh, because the city's finally fixing them. Nice. Oh, cool, Bob. I'm rooting for you, Bob.
Yeah.
Visual, emotional, memorable. And if you can't achieve that, why are you in this business?
No, I think that's a fantastic attitude to have because, especially as journalism continues to change, there's kind of this interesting dynamic or thing happening right now where there's a little bit of people need a little bit of entertainment along with their information, right? And we're seeing it on social media. We're seeing it. And I think newscasts seem like they're adjusting a little bit. But it seems like this has been kind of your practice since at least for the last 5 years I've seen your work.
Well, the industry is changing, but storytelling doesn't. The things that we remember, the most memorable stories. Cave drawings exist because they're timeless. There's some kind of emotional story out there. But the Bible, one of the oldest texts, it has parables and stories that are memorable that we remember. The storytelling in there are lessons to be learned, and there are emotional characters to relate to. Stories that you remember from your childhood, children's books, movies that you remember, articles you remember. The ones you remember, it doesn't matter what platform they're in, whether you heard it on a podcast or read it in a children's book. You remember things because you had an emotional response to them. You don't remember the boring stories you hated. You don't remember the boring lessons you learned in class. You remember the exciting teacher or the sad movie or the incredible podcast. The forum changes. The platform changes. Like this podcast, this changes.
Right.
But
yeah.
The storytelling stays the same. You're the storyteller. You're interviewing a character right now. In 10 years from now, if we redo this, we might be doing this via holograms or what. We don't know.
Right.
But storytelling exists and will always exist, and it's up to the storytellers to keep, to evolve. I have to evolve. Lord knows where I'm going to be telling stories in 10 years or 20 years. But I'm still going to be telling stories.
Right.
Because people learn. And right now the platforms are TikTok, vertical video, 15-second clips at a time. Podcasts are all the rage right now, and streaming. People are streaming left and right. but we got to feed the beast with stories.
Yep.
And that's what we're doing.
Well, no, that's when you talk about the importance of the story and the memorableness of a story. I mean, one of the areas I want to dive into with you is because I read someplace that you were I think working out of Pennsylvania area, one of the first reporters on the scene when United Flight 93 crashed during the 9/11 attacks. And I'd appreciate, and I think our listeners would too, if you could kind of recount kind of like what was that like? Like, how did that come about for you? How did you get that call? Like, what were you thinking? What did you see? Because I think that's obviously for our generation, it's a huge, it's changed our world in lots of ways. And to be one of the first on the scene there must have been pretty memorable for you.
It was a surreal day, to say the least. I mean, most journalists go through their careers never covering directly the big story. You know, when we talk about the big story, we talk about the moon landing, the JFK assassination, 9/11. You know, these huge events that transcend time and change the course of history forever. And 9/11, you know, without a doubt, changed everything on our planet. And, you know, I am this 2.5-year stupid green reporter working in central Pennsylvania. I mean, I'm still a meatball. I'm just basically just trying to make deadline and figure out my day. And I woke up this morning. We had a story. My photographer and I had a story like 2 hours away from our normal area. Okay. But we've been working on it, a long form piece, and we're going to go meet this guy down at his house and do this interview, get some video, and then go back and whatever. So as we're driving down early that morning, we start hearing on the radio, Twin Tower, plane in the Twin Towers. What the hell? Then we start playing into another twin. What the absolute hell's going on? Mm-hmm. We get to this guy's house, right? And this is in the middle of like nowhere, Pennsylvania. I've worked in nowhere. This is south of nowhere. It's the left. And we're interviewing this guy in his backyard, and we're like, can you turn on the TV so we can see this? And we're watching this thing, and we're doing things, you know, we're setting up our gear and watching the Twin Towers and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, well, this is weird. We do the interview with him. Mm-hmm. And as we're doing the interview, this is, you know, backwoods Pennsylvania, where they have town air raid sirens to summon the firefighters. There are no pagers. There's no cell phones at this time. This is 2001. Yeah. And the volunteer firefighters are summoned to the firehouse by old-fashioned air raid sirens. So we're outside, and all of a sudden the air raid sirens start going off. We're like, all right, just wait. It goes off after 30 seconds. Keeps going. And we're like, what in the hell is going on? Mm-hmm. So we were like, you know what? We're just going to have to stop. I go out to the truck, and we have like one of the first, at the time, you know, cheap news station car phones, and it's just ringing. I'm like, all right, pick up the phone here. Whoa, hey, this is Joe. And like, our newsroom had this really cool, laid back, low blood pressure anchor named Jim Penna. And he's like, dude, a plane crashed right where you guys are. I'm like, what? Really? Are you kidding me? And like, is it tied to this? Like, no, probably not. But still, what are the chances of a plane being down? So I'm like, my buddy, Mike, get in the car. We got to go. We got to go find out. I mean, there's no iPhone maps for us to follow. We have no idea where we are. But we get in the Jeep, and all of a sudden we see a fire engine. I'm like, Mike, just follow it. Don't lose it. Let's follow it. And we plowed. We drove over someone's yard. I apologize to that person. Wow. We ran red lights. We caught up to the fire engine. We just followed them, and all of a sudden, you know, the fire engine tears across this open field, and I'm like, Mike, follow it. I know where the hell's going. Right. And we follow it, and this is a grooved like farmland, and we're just like, I'm like, Mike, we're gonna stop the truck. And so he stops the truck in the middle of this field. I grab the camera because I'm easily 40 years younger than Mike. Okay. I start running towards where I see firefighters. And Mike finally catches up with the tripod. I give him the camera and I start walking. I'm like, what are they looking at? And I walked all the way up to the crater where United Flight 93 crashed into. There was nothing there, but it was smoldering. There was smoke for sure, but there was nothing that would say from that vantage point that there was a plane that crashed there. I spent the next 3-4 days in that field doing French baths and eating food from the Salvation Army, doing stories from out there. As a young person in my career, I hope to never cover that transcendent story again, because they're usually not the moon landing. Yeah. They're usually something awful like the JFK assassination or 9/11. But it was an honor to be a part of that frontline coverage. It was included in a book and whatnot. And, to be able to cover something that is that important. I wish I knew then what I know now, how to be a better storyteller, how to collect myself and be, but I was a rookie, and it is what it is. Yeah. But it's a huge part of history, and I was honored to be a part of it.
It's an amazing story. I mean, it's especially so early in your career, like to have that opportunity. I'm sure it shaped and informed how you approach things. Like you kind of said, like, I wish I knew then what I know now, but even I'm sure the next year, the next story, you treated it differently because of that experience. I have to imagine.
Yeah. I don't want to do it again.
I don't envy it because it's not easy. I think that's one of the things that most people take for granted is the idea that you're out there, you're having to ask hard questions, you're having to deal with sometimes seeing some horrible situations, and that can weigh on you. You're not just there to report. I mean, you're a human being, and that can be tough.
It was tough. I mean, I had a whole lot of side stories going on with my own family that day. So I was juggling that thing. And also, cell phones are not what they are today. The coverage was completely weak. And I didn't know exactly where my parents were, who were flying out of Dulles at the same time as all this stuff is happening down. My uncle worked at the White House. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, there were so many things that went into play that day, just personally, that, on top of me trying to figure out, oh my God, I'm covering one of the biggest stories of my career.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure.
That was a difficult story. That was one that was taxing in many ways. But do you have a story or something that you think is one of the best or most fun or most exciting experiences you've had reporting? Like that isn't maybe as intense, obviously, as the 9/11 situation.
No, that was intense and not the best work I've ever done. Certainly one of the most important stories. But I mean, I always tell people one of the cool things about being a journalist is that we get to take people places they can't go. We have access. We talk to the major players, whether it be political, social, athletic, superstars. We go play, like I've landed on an aircraft carrier, taken off from an aircraft carrier, been to Pakistan, traveled for my job. I've done very cool things that, because what I do, I'm able to do for my stories. But I actually, at a certain point in my career, I was like, I want to start like writing things down and making certain notes for myself so I don't forget these moments. And I at one point made a list of my 10 favorite stories, and I couldn't rank them at all, but they had an impact on me, and I did good jobs on them. And none of them, only one of them was had anything to do with anyone truly famous, where I was like, oh, so people would know about this. But the other 9 were just about people doing great things that just made me feel better about who I was. And one of them was just a teacher after this stupid ass pandemic. However you feel about it, it was a miserable time. And once we were out of it, it was glorious. Yep. And this teacher got to school, this elementary school, and was looking for art projects with her kids. And she found this huge stash of these things that oh my gosh, we could use these, and the kids can draw on them and paint on them, and we'll put them out on display. And I found out about this after they were done with the project. I went and interviewed these kids, and I shot the interviews through their artwork, because their artwork was on these clear plastic, right?
Yeah.
And I shot the interviews of these kids through their artwork, and then I interviewed their teacher about why she chose this medium, and she said, this is going to be welcoming our kids back to school. We're using this unique platform. The platform was the plastic dividers that used to keep the kids apart.
Oh,
geez. And she used them to unite the kids in this huge art project that they used to decorate the gate outside of school. And it was just these small little kids who've never been on TV answering questions, trying to explain what the pandemic was and what it meant to them. And just introducing the people to the kids, and then introducing them to their artwork, and then pulling back a little bit and revealing that the artwork was actually done on these things that used to keep these kids apart.
Yeah.
And the teacher was emotional, and things like that just made the pandemic more, it pushed it farther away for me. And the pandemic was miserable for me. But those stories like that stand out to me, the ones that make me feel something. If I could sit back and cry from the interviews that I've conducted, then I know I've done something great. Yeah. And that one story, that one won me. That won an Emmy, got me some other awards, but it beyond the awards, it just stands out as something that made me feel better. And a bunch of kids who may never be on television again, helped me do it.
That's awesome. That's cool. I think that look, we're fortunate to do jobs that we enjoy. Not everyone has that ability. And, when you have those moments, you really got to take it in. It sounds like you really did. And I think that's, appreciated it. That's what it sounds like. Yeah. And that's awesome. It's fun. Go ahead.
One other story.
Yeah, please.
Shortly after Tony Gwynn died, and any San Diegan with their weight of salt knows that Tony Gwynn was our king. He was a god. He was the greatest baseball player for many of us. Magic Johnson, Tony Gwynn.
Yeah.
Those were my idols growing up. And when Tony died, all of us old fart baseball fans were just like broke. And I had a buddy at 10 News who was super close to Tony, Mike Howder. He was the guy who, Tony Gwynn's legendary for his videotaping his at-bats and analyzing his swing and using video to make himself even better at hitting. Mm-hmm. And Mike Howder was a guy that did it with Tony. And Mike Howder was also a photojournalist at 10 News.
Yeah.
And when Tony died, Mike understandably was just distraught, because Tony was the manager at San Diego State at the time. And Mike Howder ran the video department at San Diego State.
Oh, geez.
So when Tony died, Mike asked me if, hey, I'm going to go over to San Diego State and clean out my gear, because, now Tony's there. I'm kind of out of that job over there. So I'm going to go get the cameras and sort of put them away. And do you want to come and just sort of document it and see what happens? And I'm like, in my head going, yeah. And so I had Mike give me a tour of Tony Gwynn Stadium, and at the end, I remember the last shot to this day, because I've seen it over and over again, but I would remember it anyways. As I'm sitting there talking to Mike, he's sort of in the coach's manager's press box type thing where you could look down on the field, and he's just sitting there talking about how, God just needed a number 2 hitter, and he starts crying. I'm behind the camera bawling my eyes out, because Tony. It was magic. It was fantastic. I was honored that Mike would want me to share that story, and such a personal, intimate thing for him to do just with me. No one else. Yeah. No one else. No fanfare. No celebrities. No press releases. Just Mike and I in Tony Gwynn Stadium, and him and I just bawling our eyes out. It was an honor to share, an honor to put together, and another one of those memorable stories that you hope to be able to share with people on a regular basis, but you treasure it when you can.
Yeah, no, that's really cool, man. Like that, those are, people can only hope to ever have that up close and experience the people who have that type of experience with a celebrity or sports star or whatever. And I think hearing those stories, I think that sometimes people don't appreciate. I think you get in these businesses and you get to meet a lot of people and do a lot of things and see a lot of stuff, but it's clear to me that there's moments that you've had that you really appreciate what you do and what you get to share. And I think that folks need to understand that these folks aren't just here to tell you everything that there is. I mean, there's a true appreciation for the community and the people that they work with when they do it, the journalists, that is. And I appreciate you sharing both of those.
My pleasure. And I'll talk about those any day you want.
I mean, most of us, you leave work and you get to kind of get away from whatever you do, you go home where, however you unwind and so forth, but you go home and, the other person in your house or one of the other people in your house is also a television journalist, your wife. Like, what is that like?
Oh boy. First off, it's Audra Stafford. She's a morning reporter here at NBC San Diego as well. Mm-hmm. And first off, it's awesome because she's hot. But two, she's also incredibly sweet and puts up with my BS. Anyone who could deal with me and my boys is a goddess. And she has got the biggest heart because I am a pain in the ass. My boys are pains in the ass. They communicate through their asses. I mean, I swear my house smells like fart all the time.
Oh man.
Yeah, so she puts up. She's a goddess, but I'm definitely of the breed of once I leave work, I'm gonna do my best to leave work there.
Yeah,
and she is very much of let's talk about work, and I'm like, so we find a happy medium.
Yep,
we take our time and discuss things and complain about things and celebrate things, but there's definitely a point where I'm like, hey, look, I realize that you're out of my league and way better looking than I am, but I can't talk about work anymore or I'm going to go kill myself.
No, you wouldn't do that, Joe. You wouldn't do that.
No, but I can't, that like you have to have that separation.
Yeah.
And like I live and die through my kids. I love my kids beyond all recognition. Mm-hmm. And like, that's my escapism. Like, what are you guys doing? We're doing volleyball? Great. You doing volleyball practice? Great. I'll sit in my car and wait for you to come out. I don't care. As long as I don't have to think about or talk about work.
Yep.
You have to have that separation. I learned too late in life. But having her at home is great because, we can definitely vent to each other.
Yep.
We can definitely celebrate to each other, but then it's like, okay, we're done talking about work now. Let's talk about anything else.
Yeah. What do y'all like to? I mean, your family. What do you guys do in your free time? I mean, what keeps you busy when it's not work time?
I love the couch, bro. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, all of our couch folks, listen to this podcast while you sit on the couch. A lot of us like the couch. Joe is one of them.
I mean, as long as I am with my kids, I don't care what we're doing. They're teenagers now, so I'm like, it's you reach this. Parents of teenagers will understand. You start seeing the clock and like, oh my God, I've only got a year and some change with my oldest son, and I've got 3.5 years and some change with my son, youngest son, and mm-hmm. It's like, oh man, I'm so many years left of them underneath my roof, and so I'm trying to maximize that time as much as possible. And it doesn't matter if they're in their room on their phones with the door locked. I don't care as long as they're in the same room. But there's so much volleyball in my life right now. I mean, my God, I didn't realize how much volleyball could be played in a year.
Do both sons play, or does one son play?
They're both volleyball players. My oldest son used to play basketball and volleyball, but now they're both dedicated to volleyball, and so they play club during the non-high school season. Then they're during the high school season, and then they have like 6 weeks off during the year before my money goes back into club again.
Yeah. Well, see, folks, like what you've learned here today is folks like Joe that you see on TV. He's just like you. He's a shuttle service for his children as well. Takes them back and forth and does whatever, and Audra helps, and it's a whole thing. So they're normal people like you, folks. As much as they're stars, but they're normal people as well. And I appreciate Joe sharing that. I got 2 final questions for you, Joe.
Okay.
Before we wrap up Flack Talk here. I'm curious. You shared a lot about some fun things at the front of the show, and a lot of great stuff about your career. I'm wondering, if heaven exists, and at the end of your life, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates about your life here on Earth?
That's a bold one, bro. I do believe I would like him to acknowledge that, hey, you made some mistakes, dude. You made a lot of mistakes, but at the same time, you did a lot of good things, and you did your best to make up for the mistakes. And come on in, man. We got a seat for you at the table.
That's great.
Yeah, because I know my mom's there. I would love to see my mom again. She died in 2017. You know, I know my family's going to be up there eventually too. And Audra is a perfect human being. I know she's going to be there. So, you know, I would like to spend eternity with them.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm by far from a perfect human. But I'm like just doing my best to, I don't know, live the best parts of my life and make everyone else's life around mine better.
That's great. Joe, do you, before we let you go, I mean, is there anything final you'd like to share with our Flack Talk listeners? Any words of advice, wisdom on life, careers, anything? You can, it's your opportunity to say any last things. Could be a fuck you, James, whatever you want to say.
No, I don't believe I'll say that one. But watch the news, damn it. I need you people to watch the news and our commercials again. All you cord cutters are pissing me off. No, just kidding. But watch the news.
Yeah.
And watch local news. I think the networks have lost their way. Fox News, MSNBC, CNN, these networks, that's not journalism. People who sit up there in front of the television and opine, offer their opinion, that's not news. That's not journalism. You can trust your local journalists, whether they're at Fox 5, CW6, NBC 7, CBS 8, KUSI, well, not KUSI, and Channel 10 News. You can trust your local news people. And yes, you can trust KUSI. We are just here to report your local community news. We don't have an agenda. We are journalists, the Union Tribune cats, the Voice of San Diego cats. Those people are journalists who are looking out for your community. We're all looking out for our community. Those network douchebags who sit up there and offer their opinion are not journalists. That's not news. That's a talk show. Yeah. That's Johnny Carson with a bent, you know, with the angle.
Yep.
And I need people to trust journalism again. And news is not found on Facebook. News is not found on some person's blog. We are trained. We are ethical. We have legal experience. We have been trained to be journalists, and people need to realize that information is important. Accurate information is paramount.
Great way to close the show, Joe. Great way. Hey, I really appreciate you making the time to come on Flack Talk. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, dude. Anytime, man. You helped me a lot in the past, and I look forward to you helping me in the future.
I will.
If you liked Flack Talk and want to learn more about your favorite muckrakers and newsbreakers, please hit the subscribe button or visit flacktalk.com. New Flack Talk episodes with James Canning air every other week, wherever you get your podcasts.